On the surface, life appears ordinary. You wake up, shower, dress, and step into a world that expects a version of you that is composed, confident, and calm. Smiles are shared, conversations flow, and people nod approvingly at your accomplishments. To the outside eye, you have it all together. But beneath the polished exterior, a quiet war rages, subtle, unrelenting, and exhausting. The mask is clever. It smiles at compliments while the mind protests in silence, "I'm not enough." It nods politely when praised, yet an internal voice whispers that success is fleeting, that every achievement is temporary and never truly deserved. Anxiety threads its way through daily tasks, making the simplest decisions feel monumental. A casual interaction can spiral into hours of overthinking. Did I say the wrong thing? Did I disappoint them? Will I always be like this? Perfectionism is the mask's most insidious companion. It appears as discipline, focus, and ambition, but it is a prison disguised as virtue. Every goal not fully achieved feels like failure. Every minor flaw becomes evidence that the mask is fragile, and the world will see the truth if it cracks. Behind the mask, the heart races at the thought of being exposed. Vulnerability feels dangerous because showing what's real, the fear, the self-doubt, the exhaustion, could unravel the carefully curated identity. The mask is not merely a social facade, it is a survival tool. It was forged long before adulthood, during moments when acceptance felt conditional, when love seemed negotiable, or when safety was uncertain. The mask learned early that compliance, perfection, and silence could protect. Now, decades later, it still obeys the ancient rules, even when the threats have vanished. It convinces the mind that hiding is safer than risking authenticity, that appearing strong is preferable to revealing the trembling soul beneath. The irony is painful. The more tightly the mask is held in place, the heavier it becomes. It constricts the self, muffles joy, and isolates the heart. Relationships are lived at a distance, intimacy is fleeting, and the world seems at once close and inaccessible. Sleep does not bring rest because the subconscious is alert, scanning for mistakes, failures, and imagined threats. Even solitude is uneasy, for in quiet moments, the mask cannot hide the inner critic. Yet the mask also protects. It keeps the chaos contained, the pain invisible, the world unaware. To remove it feels dangerous, as if the world will see not just your flaws, but the fragile child who once needed protection and never received it. So it stays in place, enduring through smiles, small victories, and daily routines, even as it silently dictates the rhythm of life. And within this delicate balance, a quiet tension exists, the tension between the mask and the self it conceals. There is a whisper, almost imperceptible at first. There is more beneath this surface. You are more than the mask you wear. It is the beginning of awareness, the first hint that the battles you face are not merely about today, but are rooted in something deeper, something that predates adulthood. The mask is powerful, but it is not permanent. The first cracks may be subtle, a moment of self-reflection, a pang of unexplained sadness, a question that refuses to be silenced. And when the mask begins to loosen, even slightly, it reveals the possibility that the inner storm can be understood, confronted, and perhaps one day, released. The journey begins here, at the threshold between what the world sees and what has been hidden. It begins with acknowledgement that anxiety, self-doubt, and perfectionism are not signs of failure, but of survival. That the mask, for all its cunning, is only a response to experiences long ago, and that behind it lies the truth waiting to be reclaimed, the self that has always existed, waiting to be recognized, understood, and freed. The mask we wear in adulthood is cunning, but it cannot fully silence the whispers of memory. Those whispers are faint, almost imperceptible at first. A flash of emotion, a pang of fear, a subtle tightening in the chest. But they are reminders of something far older than today's struggles. They hint at a truth we often resist. The battles we face now may not belong to the present at all. They are echoes, ripples from a childhood that the mind tries to forget, but the body never can. Childhood is supposed to be a sanctuary, a place of warmth, discovery, and protection. But for some, it is a labyrinth of uncertainty, where small missteps are punished with silence, rejection, or neglect. Perhaps it was a parent's absence, too many critical words, or a household filled with tension so thick it choked the air. The child learns quickly. Love can be conditional, safety is fragile, and mistakes can be costly. Survival becomes instinct, vigilance a constant companion, and the earliest lessons of the world are etched into the nervous system before the child even fully understands them. These experiences, however subtle they may have seemed at the time, echo forward through life. They do not remain confined to memory. They are imprinted on the ways we think, feel, and respond. A delayed response from a friend triggers inexplicable panic. A partner's hesitant words ignite old fear. The child's voice, long silenced, whispers through every moment of self-doubt. I am not safe. I am not enough. I am alone. And yet we often fail to recognize these echoes for what they are. The adult believes that fear, anxiety, and hypervigilance are reactions to the present, that they are proof of inadequacy or failure or temperament. But in truth, they are remnants of experiences we lived decades ago, lodged so deeply that even the rational mind cannot always trace their origin. They are the ghostly footprints of a younger self who did not have the tools, support, or security to navigate a threatening world. The echoes are everywhere, hidden in ordinary moments. A raised voice, a tone of dismissal, a delayed text, seemingly small events that ignite disproportionate emotional responses. These are not signs of weakness. They are reminders that the child inside us is still listening, still reacting, still protecting, even when the threats are no longer real. Every pang of guilt, every wave of doubt, every sudden flare of anger can be traced back to a time when survival depended on vigilance and the anticipation of danger. Sometimes the echoes are subtle, manifesting as perfectionism, overthinking, or a compulsive need for validation. Other times they crash through like a storm, overwhelming and inexplicable, leaving the adult bewildered by emotions that seem out of place. Relationships, career decisions, even moments of solitude are tinged with the residue of experiences long past, shaping choices without the conscious mind realizing it. And yet these echoes are not curses. They are messages, clues, invitations to understand and reclaim the self that has been constrained for so long. Recognizing that today's struggles are often rooted in the past does not absolve responsibility, nor does it erase pain, but it does illuminate the path forward. By tracing the origin of our reactions, by acknowledging the child we once were, and by understanding the survival strategies that once protected us, we begin to reclaim control over our present. The past is not gone. Its shadows stretch into the present, subtle yet insistent, shaping moments both large and small. But understanding the echoes, seeing them for what they are, is the first step toward freedom. Awareness is the key that begins to loosen the grip of a childhood that never truly ended, opening the possibility of choice, peace, and transformation. Scars you can see tell a story. They can be touched, cleaned, bandaged, and eventually fade. But the scars that matter most are often invisible, etched not on the skin, but deep within the nervous system, brain, and body. Childhood trauma leaves these invisible imprints, subtle, persistent, and powerful, shaping every thought, emotion, and decision long after the events themselves are forgotten. Every moment of fear, neglect, or emotional pain experienced as a child becomes a lesson in survival. The young brain adapts, muscles tense, senses sharpen, and the mind learns to anticipate threats before they arrive. These adaptations are remarkable feats of resilience at the time, but when carried into adulthood, the survival mechanisms that once kept the child alive can become hidden chains, dictating behavior and shaping life in ways the conscious mind barely recognizes. An adult may find themselves overreacting to minor criticisms, avoiding opportunities that feel too risky, or withdrawing from relationships for reasons they cannot articulate. What looks like a personality quirk, a flaw, or even laziness is often the residue of an invisible imprint laid decades earlier. It is the body and mind echoing the logic of a child who had no choice but to remain alert and cautious. Science illuminates the reality of these imprints. Trauma can alter the structure and function of the brain. The amygdala becomes hypervigilant, scanning constantly for danger. The hippocampus, essential for processing and contextualizing memories, may shrink, making it difficult to distinguish past threats from present safety. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for rational thinking and regulation of emotion, struggles to override the brain's learned survival responses. The nervous system itself becomes conditioned to expect chaos, tension, and danger long after the world has become safe. The consequences are profound yet subtle. A racing heartbeat in a quiet room, tightness in the shoulders, shallow breathing, insomnia, and chronic stress all are signs that the body remembers what the conscious mind has forgotten. The invisible imprint operates silently, influencing relationships, career decisions, and even self-perception. A child's lessons in survival become adult patterns of fear, mistrust, or self-protection, so ingrained that the adult often believes they are natural, unchangeable traits. And yet, the imprint is not destiny. Awareness allows for recognition, and recognition opens the door to change. By understanding that these patterns were forged out of necessity, not weakness, the adult can begin to rewire responses, challenge automatic reactions, and slowly reclaim freedom from the invisible chains that have guided their life for decades. The invisible imprint is a paradox, a mark of past pain, yet also a testament to survival, resilience, and adaptation. A child once protected themselves as best they could, and now the adult must protect the self again, not from the past, but from the lingering influence of survival strategies that no longer serve. Only by acknowledging the imprint can the journey forward truly begin. The mind forgets. Memories fade. Faces blur. But the body never forgets. Even when the conscious mind has buried the past, the body carries it, silently and relentlessly, in ways both subtle and profound. Every tense muscle, shallow breath, and restless night is a whisper of experiences long ago, experiences that the child once endured and survived. Trauma does not leave only emotional scars. It imprints on the very physiology of the body. The nervous system remembers the threat even when the threat no longer exists. The heart races at a minor perceived criticism. A tightness grips the chest during a fleeting confrontation, and the stomach churns at even the smallest stressor. The body, trained to anticipate danger, reacts before the mind even registers what has occurred. Sometimes it is obvious. Panic attacks, sudden anger, insomnia, or chronic fatigue reveal the echoes of old fear. Other times, the imprint is subtle, almost invisible. A hesitation before intimacy, a compulsive need for control, or the recurring urge to withdraw. These responses are not random quirks of personality. They are the body's language, speaking in signals learned long ago, before the conscious mind could even articulate them. The cruel irony is that the very survival mechanisms that once protected the child now interfere with adult life. Hypervigilance becomes anxiety. Guarded instincts become isolation. The nervous system, conditioned to react instantly to danger, struggles to recognize safety. Every achievement may feel hollow because the body is still bracing, still waiting for the other shoe to drop. Science confirms what the body already knows. Chronic trauma can affect hormone levels, keeping cortisol elevated, creating persistent stress responses that impact sleep, digestion, and immune function. Muscle tension, migraines, and unexplained pain are not simply coincidences. They are somatic memories, manifestations of an invisible history etched into the body's tissues. Even breathing patterns can carry the imprint of fear, shallow and tense, mimicking the child's constant alertness. Yet within this burden lies the possibility of change. Recognizing that the body remembers is the first step toward reclaiming it. Through awareness, mindfulness, and intentional practices, the adult can begin to teach the body that it is safe. The racing heart can slow, the muscles can relax, and the nervous system can learn to distinguish between past threats and present reality. The body, once a vessel of fear, can become a sanctuary. It has endured the worst, adapted to survive, and now, with gentle guidance, it can relearn peace. Healing begins not only in the mind, but in the tissues, the breath, the heartbeat. And when the body is finally listened to, understood, and honored, the invisible weight of trauma begins to lift, and the journey toward freedom, resilience, and wholeness continues. The child once learned to survive. Every glance, every word, every subtle gesture was a lesson in safety and self-preservation. The mind and body developed mechanisms to navigate a world that often felt unpredictable, cold, or even dangerous. These mechanisms were clever, necessary, and life-saving. But decades later, the very strategies that once protected the child have become invisible saboteurs in the adult life. Perfectionism is the first betrayer. Once it secured praise, avoided criticism, and kept danger at bay. Now it is a relentless taskmaster. Every achievement is weighed against an impossible standard. Every minor flaw is magnified. Success feels temporary, never fully satisfying. The adult chases goals not for joy, but for validation, haunted by the fear that one misstep will expose the inadequacy that was never truly healed. Avoidance, another tool of survival, quietly steals opportunity. The child learned to step back from potential harm, but now the adult retreats from intimacy, challenges, and sometimes even joy. Important decisions are deferred, risks avoided, and relationships remain shallow. What was once protective now limits life, creating invisible walls that are difficult to recognize, let alone dismantle. Hypervigilance, vigilance that once saved lives, becomes anxiety. The adult reacts disproportionately to minor events. A delayed reply from a friend triggers panic. A subtle shift in a partner's tone feels like abandonment. These responses, once necessary, now interfere with emotional freedom, leaving the adult exhausted, frustrated, and bewildered by patterns they cannot easily explain. The betrayal is subtle, insidious, and deeply personal. Unlike external enemies, these saboteurs live inside. They masquerade as caution, discipline, or prudence. They are invisible yet relentless. The adult may rationalize these behaviors as quirks or personality traits, unaware that they are echoes of a child's survival strategies, rules learned to protect a vulnerable self, now dictating the rhythms of adult life. And yet understanding the betrayal is the first step toward liberation. Recognizing that these internal saboteurs are not weaknesses but adaptations reframes the narrative. They are not personal failings, but evidence of resilience, ingenuity, and survival. With awareness, therapy, and conscious practice, the adult can begin to negotiate with these internal forces, transforming them from hidden enemies into allies, learning when to rely on them and when to release their grip. The betrayal within is not a sentence to a life of struggle. It is a guidepost. It signals where the wounds are deepest, where the old lessons of survival are strongest, and where conscious effort is required to reclaim autonomy. The journey is not simple, and the echoes are persistent, but each step toward understanding chips away at the invisible chains, offering the adult a chance to finally live with freedom, choice, and authenticity. Every bond we form carries echoes of the past, whether we recognize it or not. Friendships, romantic relationships, and even family connections are subtly shaped by the childhood experiences that left invisible imprints on our minds and bodies. The adult believes they are responding to the present, but more often than not, it is the child within, still frightened, still vigilant, still searching for the safety and love that were once inconsistent or absent. Fear of abandonment casts a long shadow. A partner's delayed message, a friend's inattentive gesture, or a colleague's overlooked comment can trigger panic, irritation, or withdrawal far out of proportion to the situation. The adult reacts as though the threat is immediate, unaware that the reaction is an echo of long-past experiences. Each interaction becomes a test, each relationship a mirror reflecting unresolved fears and unmet needs from childhood. Some respond by clinging desperately to approval and validation, their self-worth dependent on the reassurance of others. Others erect walls, keeping everyone at a distance, believing that vulnerability will inevitably lead to pain. Patterns repeat: attraction to unavailable partners, intense early attachment, followed by abrupt withdrawal, or repeated conflicts that seem familiar yet inexplicable. Relationships feel like a battleground where history plays out in quiet, subtle ways. Even intimacy is haunted. Trust is fragile, empathy complicated by suspicion, and closeness tinged with fear. Moments that should bring comfort can trigger discomfort. Moments of joy can be shadowed by anxiety. What feels irrational to the conscious mind is the child's survival instinct in motion, guiding behaviors in ways that are invisible but powerful. And yet, these haunting patterns are also signals. They point to wounds that need attention, reactions that need understanding, and fears that need acknowledgement. Recognizing these patterns allows the adult to pause, reflect, and choose differently. Awareness becomes a tool to break cycles, to nurture trust, and to respond with compassion rather than fear. The haunting is not a punishment, nor a reflection of moral failure. It is a survival story written into the heart and mind. Each relationship, each interaction is an opportunity to heal, to rewrite the narrative, and to cultivate connections that are not merely echoes of the past, but genuine, present experiences. Understanding that relationships carry the imprint of childhood is both humbling and liberating. It is the first step toward love that is conscious, reciprocal, and freeing. Not all battles are visible. Some lie beneath awareness, hidden in the shadowed corridors of the subconscious. Trauma, having burrowed deep into the psyche during formative years, often operates quietly, guiding thoughts, emotions, and behaviors without the conscious mind ever realizing it. The adult believes they are making choices freely, yet many decisions are influenced by patterns laid down decades earlier. Nightmares, intrusive thoughts, and sudden emotional eruptions are the mind's way of replaying old scenarios, of warning the adult of danger that may no longer exist. A minor argument can trigger disproportionate anxiety. A fleeting memory can ignite guilt or shame that seems out of place. Habits form without intention. Avoidance, overthinking, and compulsive behaviors appear automatic, but they are the subconscious's survival scripts, deeply ingrained from a time when vigilance was essential for safety. Even the subtler effects are profound. Self-doubt, indecision, and hesitation may quietly shape career choices, friendships, and romantic relationships. The adult rationalizes these behaviors as quirks or personal failings, unaware that the subconscious is operating like a ghostwriter of life's narrative, replaying old fears, insecurities, and defense mechanisms learned long ago. The insidiousness of the trap lies in its invisibility. Because it is subconscious, the adult often blames themselves for patterns they cannot fully control. They may feel flawed, incapable, or stuck, unaware that what feels like personal weakness is, in fact, the echo of a child navigating a world of unpredictability and threat. The subconscious remembers before the conscious mind does. It reacts before rational thought intervenes. Yet recognition is power. When the subconscious patterns are illuminated through reflection, therapy, mindfulness, or self-awareness, the adult gains the ability to respond differently. The puppeteer of old fear is revealed, and conscious choice begins to replace automatic reaction. Patterns can be interrupted. Old scripts can be rewritten. Triggers can be understood rather than feared. The subconscious trap is not a prison, but a maze, complex, winding, and hidden. Understanding its existence transforms it from a source of frustration into a map of where healing is needed. By navigating it intentionally, the adult can reclaim agency, regain emotional freedom, and begin to live in a way that honors both the child who once needed protection and the adult who now seeks liberation. The struggles we live with are not merely emotional or imagined. They are deeply biological. Trauma, particularly in childhood, leaves tangible marks on the brain and nervous system, shaping the way we perceive the world, process emotions, and respond to stress. What once felt like inexplicable reactions, panic, hypervigilance, or emotional outbursts, are now understood as the echoes of neurological adaptation. The amygdala, the brain's alarm system, becomes hyperactive under trauma. It scans relentlessly for danger, triggering fight-or-flight responses even in safe environments. A minor disagreement, a delayed message, or a fleeting expression can set off alarms that the rational mind cannot immediately quell. The hippocampus, which helps process memories and differentiate past from present, may shrink or function less effectively, making it difficult to distinguish real threats from old fears. And the prefrontal cortex, the seat of rational thought and emotional regulation, struggles to assert control over a nervous system trained for survival, not peace. The body, too, carries these shadows. Chronic stress floods the system with cortisol, keeping muscles tense, heart rates elevated, and sleep cycles disrupted. Digestive issues, migraines, and unexplained fatigue often accompany these invisible scars. Even when the conscious mind believes the past is gone, the body remembers, a living archive of early experiences encoded in every fiber of being. Psychology confirms what the body has always known. Patterns of avoidance, self-sabotage, and hypervigilance are not moral failings or personality flaws. They are survival strategies ingrained in the nervous system. Over decades, they become automatic responses, appearing in relationships, careers, and daily life as habits so deeply entrenched they feel unavoidable. Yet the science offers hope as well as explanation. Neuroplasticity, the brain's remarkable capacity to reorganize itself, shows that these imprints are not permanent. With intentional practice, therapy, mindfulness, meditation, and conscious behavioral change, the nervous system can learn safety. Old patterns can be softened, responses recalibrated, and the body and mind can be retrained to recognize calm, security, and peace. Understanding the science behind these shadows transforms perception. What once felt like personal weakness becomes evidence of adaptation and survival. The haunting patterns are reframed as biological legacies, not failures. Knowledge empowers the adult to approach healing methodically, knowing that every conscious step reshapes neural pathways. Every moment of self-compassion interrupts automatic fear, and every choice towards safety rewrites a story that began decades ago. In the shadows of trauma, biology and psychology meet. The brain, body, and nervous system bear witness to the past, but they are not immutable. Science illuminates the path forward, proving that the echoes of childhood can be acknowledged, understood, and ultimately transformed. For years, the weight of invisible burdens can feel unending. Anxiety, self-doubt, hypervigilance, and the echoes of past trauma dominate the inner world, making freedom feel impossible. Yet in the quiet, often imperceptible moments, awareness begins to stir. It may arrive as a thought, a feeling, or even a question. What if these struggles aren't who I am, but what I've carried from before? This is the first spark of the turning point, the realization that the chains of the past do not have to define the present. Healing begins in awareness. Therapy is no longer just talking, it becomes excavation, carefully uncovering buried experiences, understanding the survival strategies that once protected, and learning how to respond rather than react. Mindfulness and meditation train the nervous system to recognize safety. Self-compassion offers relief to the inner child who long endured fear, neglect, or unpredictability. Each small victory, a night of restful sleep, a relationship approached without panic, a moment of courage, signals that change is possible. The turning point is gradual, almost imperceptible at first. Patterns that once seemed permanent now appear as challenges to navigate rather than rules to obey. The adult begins to notice triggers and responses, observing them without judgment. The child's old fears are acknowledged, but the adult now has the choice to respond differently. The storm no longer dictates the day. The observer within begins to take the reins. Relationships start to shift. Trust, long withheld, is slowly rebuilt. Emotional responses, once automatic, become conscious choices. Moments of intimacy, vulnerability, and authentic connection are no longer threats, but opportunities for growth. The adult begins to recognize their agency, the capacity to create boundaries, to seek support, and to engage in life without being automatically pulled by the shadows of the past. Hope, fragile at first, grows stronger with every deliberate step. The mask loosens, revealing the self beneath, a self that is capable, resilient, and deserving of care. The whispers of the past still exist, but they no longer have control. The turning point is both a moment of insight and a process, the recognition that while trauma shaped the adult, it does not own them. This is the threshold between survival and thriving, between reacting automatically and living consciously. The turning point marks the beginning of reclamation, a deliberate choice to navigate life with awareness, compassion, and courage. For the first time, the adult realizes the past may have written the prologue, but the future is theirs to author. After a long journey through fear, doubt, and hidden patterns, the truth finally emerges. Your past shapes you, but it does not own you. The scars, imprints, and invisible chains that once dictated your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors were never a measure of your worth. They were survival strategies, the lessons of a child navigating a world that did not always offer safety, acceptance, or love. For decades, it may have felt as though life was predetermined, scripted by events long gone. Patterns of anxiety, mistrust, avoidance, or perfectionism seemed permanent, as if the adult self had no agency over them. Yet awareness, understanding, and deliberate practice illuminate a powerful truth. The patterns are not destiny. They are inherited responses, and the adult has the capacity to rewrite them. The final reveal is both shocking and liberating. What was once perceived as weakness, the overthinking, the panic, the relentless self-criticism, is reframed as resilience, adaptation, and intelligence. The child inside you survived with remarkable ingenuity. The adult now has the wisdom, awareness, and tools to transform that survival into strength. The traits that once constrained you can be harnessed, understood, and guided toward growth. Healing is not linear, nor does it erase the past. It reshapes the present. Moments of fear may still arise, shadows may still whisper, and old habits may persist. But the difference is profound. The adult can respond consciously rather than react unconsciously. Boundaries can be set, relationships approached with clarity, and emotions processed without being overwhelmed. The self that was once a hostage to survival strategies now stands as the architect of its own future. This revelation is freedom. The mask can finally be removed, revealing the self that was always present, resilient, and capable. The body, mind, and nervous system, once burdened by the weight of trauma, can learn safety and peace. The adult now holds the pen, rewriting a life story that was once dominated by fear into one of empowerment, choice, and authenticity. And the ultimate twist is, while the past informs who you are, it does not determine who you can become. The echoes of childhood, the invisible imprints, the subconscious traps, and the haunting patterns are no longer chains, but signposts, reminders of survival and indicators of where attention, compassion, and courage are needed. By facing the past, acknowledging its lessons, and intentionally reshaping responses, the adult finally claims the life that was always possible, whole, conscious, and free. The journey ends not with perfection, but with liberation. Not with erasure of the past, but with mastery over its influence. The final reveal is profound and simple. The past shaped you, yes, but it does not define you. The power to reclaim your story, to live fully and authentically, has always been within your grasp.